This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, this morning's program is sponsored by the Greenspan family for Shlema, for Yaakov and Esther Malka. Pesach Shachal Yisrael. Here we are again, another year, another Tisha B'Av. We're certainly hoping not to have to be here again, but by now we're used to this, like we read in the Haftarah, Avar Katzir Kol HaKayetz V'anachnu Lo Noishanu. We all know that Tisha B'Av is the most tragic day on the Jewish calendar. We're all familiar with the litany of national and personal tragedies that have occurred on Tisha B'Av. From that very first Tisha B'Av that the Meraglim came back with their slanderous report against Eretz Yisrael, and it was decreed that we would not enter the Holy Land. Yirmiyah Hanavi was born on Tisha B'Av, and he cursed the day of his birth. The Mishnah says at the end of Tainus, 5 tragedies happened on Tisha B'Av. First Beis Hamikdash was destroyed. Second Beis Hamikdash was destroyed. The city of Beitar was captured, and Turnus Rufus plowed over Yerushalayim. And throughout Jewish history, Tisha B'Av has been a lightning rod of Jewish tragedy. If there's something bad to happen, it happens on Tisha B'Av. The city of Alexandria, which was bigger than Beitar, was destroyed on Tisha B'Av. In the year 1295, the year Kala Garesh Garesh, the community of England was exiled on Tisha B'Av. The Jews of France were expelled on Tisha B'Av. Spanish Jewry was banished on Tisha B'Av, 1492. World War I broke out on Tisha B'Av. A day of national disaster and personal tragedy, again and again and again, all rooted in Churban Beis Hamikdash. And yet, as tragic of a day as it is, we're still challenged to have even a small, meaningful connection to Tisha B'Av. We say the Kinnus, we hear the speeches, and we watch all the holy movies. And we still struggle to connect, what does Tisha B'Av have to do with me personally? You know, it always struck me, if one tallies up the total number of Kinnus recited on Tisha B'Av, you know how many Kinnus we say on Tisha B'Av? 45 Kinnus on Tisha B'Av. Gematria Adam, indicating that it's not just the temple that's destroyed, but there's something about us that is missing. There's something about our personalities, that we are in a state of Churban. That it is we who are nechrav. It is we who are devastated. As we say in the Haftarah on Shabbos Chazoin, mikaf regel v'yad roish, ein boi mesayim. That there's nothing whole about us. And by reciting the 45 Kinnus, we're not just trying to rebuild the Beis Hamikdash, we attempt to rebuild ourselves, our physical, emotional, psychological, and spiritual entities. Let's develop this further. Because while we have such a hard time relating to the Beis Hamikdash, if one were to try to get an understanding of what is the most important subject in the whole Torah, one would presume that it's realistic to take a look at the Chumash and study what occupies the most real estate, and based on that, get a glimpse into what is most important to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So we know the mitzvah of Talmud Torah is very great. And how many times does the mitzvah of Talmud Torah appear in the Chumash? 16 times. And the mitzvah of Chesed is great, and therefore it says the number of times V'halachta b'dracha, but there is clearly one subject that far out surpasses any other topic in the Chumash. Not by 5 times, not by 10 times, by 100 times. And that is the subject of the Mishkan. Its dimensions, its materials, its construction, the garments that are worn there. It's too loud. The topic of the Mishkan occupies 5 parshiyos: Truma, Tetzaveh, part of Kisisa, Vayakel, Pekudei. What exactly is so important about the Mishkan? We don't even have the Mishkan. We've never even seen the Mishkan. Not us, not our fathers, not our grandparents, not our great-grandparents. And we have to read about the details every single year. I mean, even your own house. Do you know how long your house is? Do you know how wide your house is? Do you know the dimensions of your couch, of your coffee table, of the paintings? You know those dimensions? I hope not. Do you recite a document annually about the dimensions of your home? If you do, you need major assistance. And yet every single year, we read over in the Torah Akdosha the dimensions of the Aron, the dimensions of the Menorah, the dimensions of the Kruvim, the Kroshim, the Amudim, the Paroiches, the Kapoires. Every single year, 5 times. This would be unusual even for a house that you that you live in, let alone a house that you never moved into. So an important clue to help answer this question could be found in the beginning of Parshas Truma, where the Torah Akdosha says, so Rebbeinu Shalom comes to Moshe and he says, K'choil asher ani mare oischa. Hashem doesn't say, K'choil asher ani mare lecha, in accordance with everything I show to you, but rather, K'choil asher ani mare oischa, in accordance with everything I show you. As if Hashem is telling Moshe, Moshe, I'm showing you you. What's the meaning of this? So the secret to explain the Mishkan can be found in a work that is attributed to the Rambam, called Pirkei HaHatzlacha. It can be found in the Kuzari and in the writings of Rabbeinu Bechaye. And that is, they offer an incredible idea that the Mishkan is merely a mashal and a parable. It's a paradigm and a representation of Adam, of man. The parts of the Mishkan represent the various limbs of man. This idea is further elaborated upon by Rabbi Shua Heller in his great Sefer Oyel Yehoshua. Rabbi Shua Heller was a student of Reb Chaim Volozhiner. He lived from 1814 to 1880. And Rabbi Shua Heller goes to great lengths to explain how the details of the Mishkan and the appurtenances of the Mishkan symbolize different parts of man. Says Rabbi Shua Heller, just as the holiest area of the Mishkan can be broken up into 3 parts, the Kodesh HaKadoshim, the Kodesh, and the Chatzer, the human head could be subdivided into 3 parts. Where you have the mind, which is the Kodesh HaKadoshim, where you have the eyes and the nose, which is the Kodesh, and you have the mouth, which is the Chatzer. Says Rabbi Shua Heller, the 3 parts of the Mishkan symbolize the 3 parts of the human face. The Kodesh HaKadoshim symbolizes the forehead and the brain. That is why Aaron HaKohen wore on his forehead that said Kodesh Lashem. Because the mind, the human mind, is the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Says the Zohar HaKadosh and the Idra Rabbah and the Idra Zuta that there are 3 chambers of the brain. What are they? Chachma, Bina, Das. They correspond to the Aron and the 2 Kruvim, and therefore says Rabbeinu Bechaye, V'noira v'oyem l'misboinein. If somebody were to contemplate that the Kedusha that resides on the head of a person when one puts on the Tefillin Shel Rosh is greater than the Kedusha that resided mibein Shnei Akruvim. Says Rabbi Shua Heller, Uma oyoim hamachazeh hazeh al zois yecharad lev ha'adam. And therefore we have to make sure that our thoughts are pure. Because as Reb Chaim Volozhiner says, that when a Jew has an impure thought, it's like he's being machnis, a zoina, to the Kodesh HaKadoshim. When a Jew allows himself to be consumed with kas, it's like bringing a fire into the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Did you ever try to bring a tselem into the Beis HaMikdash? You want to try? I'll give you a good idea. You could do it every day. You could take out a little device, and while you're wearing tefillin and the Shekhinah is residing on your head, you could be machnis a tselem into the Kodesh HaKadoshim. It's available at any time. You too could be like Menashe, like Titus. You know, Winston Churchill writes that the great battle between good and evil that beats in the heart of all man is most intense in the heart of a Jew. Because a Jew could change the world, and a Jew could illuminate the world, and a Jew can destroy the world at any time. That's the power that we have the capacity to accomplish. That's the first part of the face, the forehead, the mind that represents Kodesh HaKadoshim. Then you have the second part of the face, the second level of the panim, the eyes and the nose. The eyes, says Rabbi Shua Heller, are the menorah and the shulchan, the two klei hashares that are exactly opposite each other. The nose is represented by the Mizbeach HaKetoires. Yasimu Ketoires be'apecha. The Mizbeach HaKetoires is the nose. It's very interesting. The Gemara in Yuma Lamed Gimel Lamed Beis mentions that the same way the two eyes are on par with each other, the shulchan and the menorah cannot have the Mizbeach HaKetoires interposing in between them. Says the Gemara, listen to this lashon, the Gemara in Yuma Daf Lamed Gimel Lamed Beis. Ki heichi dechazi ahadadi. The shulchan and the menorah need to be able to see each other. Like the two eyes that have to see each other. Do we value our eyes like the menorah, like the shulchan? Do we make sure that what enters the porthole of vision would be worthy to enter the Kodesh of the Beis HaMikdash? And then the next area of the face is the mouth. The mouth, says Rabbi Shua Heller, corresponds to Achilas HaMizbeach, the Mizbeach in the Chatzar. Do we eat as if our mouth would be the Mizbeach in the Heichal? And then Rabbi Shua Heller makes a revelation that no Gadol before him ever brought to the forefront. Says Rabbi Shua Heller, if you were to add up the 48 Krushim, and the 100 Adonim, and the 10 Urios, and the 100 Lulais, and the 50 Krosim, and 15 Brichim, and 96 Tabois, and the Paroiches, and the 4 Amudim, and the 4 Vavim, and the Masach, and the 5 Amudim, and the 5 Adonim, and the 5 Vavim, and the Kiyar, and the Mizbeach HaKetoires, and the Mizbeach HaZohav, and the Menorah, and the Shulchan, and the Kruvim, and the Kapoires, and the Aroin, you get precisely 613. Keneged Eivarav Shel Adam. Says Ribono Shalom to Moshe Rabbeinu, Kechol Asher Ani Mare Oischa. You know what the Mishkan is? You know what the Mikdash is? It is you. It is a paradigm of you. It is a parallel to you. The purpose of the Mishkan is to glean some semblance of insight into our own greatness. How important our minds are. How important our eyes are. How important our mouth is. Person would like to think, who am I? What is my avodah worth? What value do my maisim tovim have? Who are you? You're a Mishkan. You're a Mikdash. You're a Beis HaMikdash. Actually, the Beis HaMikdash is only a mashal to you. If the Beis HaMikdash was burning down on Shabbos, you could not save it. If the Mishkan burnt down on Shabbos, you cannot save it. But if a Jew's life was in jeopardy, and there was even a slight chance you could save their life, you would be required to save their life on Shabbos. And that is because as great as the Beis HaMikdash is, the Jew is much greater. The details of your house are not that important. But the Mishkan is not just a house. It's a replica of Adam. It's a replica of you. And nothing is more important than you. So you're going to go to the doctor for your checkup, and the doctor is going to measure you, and he's going to weigh you. I mean, what could happen over a year? But you never know. Maybe you'll go up, maybe you'll go down, maybe you'll get taller. Hopefully that's the only change. Every detail is critical. Every detail is crucial. The topic that occupies the most real estate in the Chumash is the Mikdash. More than learning Torah, more than doing Chesed, more than any detail of the mitzvahs, because there's nothing more important than you. So in light of this concept, that the Mishkan and the Mikdash is a metaphor and a paradigm for Adam, what then does it mean if the Beis HaMikdash is destroyed? What does it mean if the Mishkan is b'chorbana? What does it say about us? What does it say about Adam? It signifies that if the Beis HaMikdash is destroyed, then our personal state is b'chorban. Then our spiritual standing has crumbled and fallen to the ground. And if the Beis HaMikdash's status is a reflection of man, then never has the Beis HaMikdash been more desecrated than in our times. Because as the years go by, mankind descends lower and lower into darkness, into immorality, and our feelings of churban then should intensify as the years pass by. And therefore our personal feelings of churban become greater and greater, and that is why we say in the Kinnus, Espoid b'chol shana v'shana mispeid chadash. Every year we eulogize anew. It is then our duty on Tisha B'Av for each one of us to ask ourselves, is my guf worthy to be a resting place for the Shekhinah? That's the purpose of the Kinnus. Because if there is no Beis HaMikdash, then there is no Adam. Is my mind a Kodesh HaKadoshim? Are my eyes a menorah and a shulchan? Do my midos allow the Shekhinah to rest on me? Does my Yerushalmayim enable the Shekhinah to rest on me? Are my Evarim krushim? Are my limbs klei shares? And in a world of churban, we know what the answer is. Mikaf regel viad roish ein boi mesayim. That there's nothing whole about us. And as we attempt to say the 45 Kinnus, B'gematria Adam, more than trying to rebuild the Beis HaMikdash, which is only a mashal to Adam, we try to rebuild ourselves, the Mikdash that is us, to be Mekayim v'yasuli Mikdash v'shachanti b'soicham. Yiratzayin mofanecha Hashem Elokeinu v'Elokei Avosenu sheyibana Beis HaMikdash b'mehera v'yameinu.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.